It's 1800 on my clock here in Pacific time, so we're going to dive in. Thank you everybody that joined. As other folks trickle in, definitely welcome to. And we're recording this now, just so everybody's aware, so that we can watch this again later for folks who can't make it right now and all that sort of thing. My name is Jeff Stock. I am the co-founder, CEO here at Hired Labs, and I also run the coding bootcamp. I'm going to be the instructor for this. Thank you all for joining. Our general mission here at Hired Labs is we're working on combating underemployment with veterans. We find that particularly enlisted folks like us have a much higher chance of working in jobs that are completely unfulfilling, underpaid, working less than they could, all sorts of things. And it's a much broader issue than I had realized. Even though unemployment in veterans has been going down and is actually doing pretty well compared to our peers, underemployment has been rising since about 2010. So what we try to do is help find meaningful work, and we do two main services for that. This boot camp is one of them. The other one is totally separate, but you may receive messages from my team inviting you to take part in that. There's no, you don't have to. It's all free. But the other side of it is resume writing and tailored job searches. If you're interested, you're welcome to take part in those as well. But what we're here for today is coding bootcamp. So again, welcome. This is our first week. And before we dive into the content or foundations of things, I want to kind of introduce each other, get each other knowing who we are, who's going to be in this class with us. Again, my name is Jeff Stock, Marine Corps veteran. I was in 2001 to 2010. I was a Russian linguist and interpreter. I did some signals intelligence for a bit and then did some arms control for the last little bit. Since then, I've been working in tech, did a number of things, a number of different capacities, and now I'm doing this. And I'm in California. I'm outside of San Francisco. So if somebody else wants to jump in and introduce themselves similarly, like branch of service, anything you want to say about it, kind of where you are now, and maybe what you're looking forward to in this course and why you're here. Somebody wants to volunteer. If not, I'll pick you.
Yeah, I'll go.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Daniel. I was in the Navy, the combat corpsman, deployed with the Marines, First Marines, and was in from 2001, 2006. And was out of California. That's where I grew up. And then until I moved to Texas, I'm here in the Dallas area now since 2017.
Okay. Excellent.
And I've done a lot of things, but never done anything like this. So it's brand new for me.
Cool. Cool. Well, welcome. Glad to have you, and really appreciate the corpsman, man. Absolutely. That's all the love.
Thank you.
All right. Who's up?
I'll go.
All right.
My name is Josh, Marine Corps from 2018 to 2022 when I got medically retired. Yeah, in the Puget Sound right now, was stationed in 29 Palms, California for the entire time of my enlistment. And then next month I'll be moving to Eastern Washington. In this class, just because I'm going into a job for radio tech as well, what I did in the Marine Corps. But the world of radio tech is moving to where you're going to be needing to code your own networks and everything. So figured, why not get ahead of the game?
Nice. Nice. All right. Welcome. Glad to have you. Who's next?
I guess I'll go. I'm Joshua. You can call me JT since we have another Josh. I was in the Army for about 5 years. I now work in a wood room, but about a month ago or so, I've been having some issues, so I'm trying to find a different job that with less dangerous equipment. So I am here seeing if this is a good fit for me or not.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Great. Glad to have you as well. Welcome. And who would like to go next?
I'll try. I'll
Okay.
try. Anthony Nashier, U.S. Army military police, 6 years. Uh, I got a lot of education in the cyber field, but very little chance to get a job. I'm trying to do cybersecurity, and I was recently, when I was given a chance, I was working for Google for the last 9 years as a physical security specialist, and then I got laid off. But during that time, I was given a couple opportunities to branch off and do some cyber work on the side of doing physical. But then every time it happened, like it was a reorg, and then the last I got laid off. So never could quite reach that.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Well, sorry to hear that, but I'm glad you're here, and hopefully we'll get to some useful stuff for you. Who wants to hop in
Great.
next?
I'll go.
Okay.
My name is Noel Gamos. Basically, this is new to me. I was in the healthcare field before, doing X-ray stuff. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. So, yep, I just want to learn new things. I think this one is very interesting, and yeah, let's see.
Okay. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Welcome. All right, who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Yeah.
My name is Ariel. I was in the Navy for 6 years from 2013 to 2019 as an Arabic linguist. I'm in North Carolina right now, and I want to take this class to just learn something new. I learned a little bit of C#, but like very basic stuff. So I'm pretty
Okay.
much starting from scratch here too.
Nice. 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 Well, welcome. Welcome. Do you stay up on your Arabic at all?
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. Right. It's nice to see another linguist in here. I'm very excited about that. I think you're the first other linguist that's been in the courses so far. Who wants to jump in and introduce themselves next?
Do you stay up on your Russian though?
Oh yeah, man, I'm totally fluent. Yeah,
Okay.
I do. Yeah. I'm actually probably going to go back and teach at DLI in maybe next year or something like that. So all right, who's up? Kevin, Anthony, Nathan, one of you want to jump in? Kevin, you want to jump in?
I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin, medically retired Navy. I currently do work in tech. I am a cloud engineer. I kind of took this as an opportunity to advance myself a little bit further and improve what I might be able to improve or learn something new. So,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. If you're already doing cloud engineering, man, I'm not sure we're gonna have a lot that you don't know, but and definitely feel free to chime in if we're going off on something that you have info on for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, glad to have you. Welcome.
Hey, I'm on.
Nathan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, getting some feedback, man.
Yeah. Sorry. Every time. Can you guys hear me? Okay?
Now it's getting that feedback. Oh,
No.
I think that's a little better. I can see you.
Hi, so my name is Nathan. I was in the Marine Corps from 94 to 98. I was in the Marine Corps from 94 to 98. Then from 98 to 2003, I was in the Army. I currently am looking for, I do freelance work in the academy and doing boot camp thing. I really appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, man, glad you're here. That was trippy with the feedback, but I kind of liked it. I appreciate you. That was good. Setting the tone. It's gonna be relaxing. It's gonna be like an EDM session. All right, so who is left for intros?
Hey, Greg O'Shea. I was an Air Force brat. Then I did 6 years in the Navy. Inspired me to go back to college and pay attention. I taught for a few years, instructional designer, and then I got into tech about 20 years ago. But I've done most of the jobs on the business side of developing and delivering technical products and services. And then I got pretty heavy into Agile the last 15 years, 20 years, 15 years of leading scaled Agile transformations.
Oh, okay.
I've messed around a lot with HTML and XML. I kind of built my own Rally ADO Jira type tool. I often think I should have gone off and made it a real thing before those guys did it to support agile development. And then yeah, my son took Python classes to hack his guitar pedals. So this is something that I was interested in, and I think it would boost my skills. I live on a small island in Hawaii. It's not any work here, so trying to find something that I could do, add my skills so I can do more remote stuff. So I appreciate you guys putting this together and letting us jump in and do it too. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really appreciate you being here, and hopefully it's valuable for you. So same thing. If you got a lot of experience in anything that we touch on, especially when it comes to like design stuff and concepts, like we're not going to get deep on any of them, but if you got some thoughts, I think your experience with Agile particularly would be really useful. So, and how things work in the real world as well, because this is the focus here is supposed to be practical knowledge as we go. So if you've got experience in the space, we're definitely open to hearing it. All right. Anyone else who has not gone introducing themselves that has jumped in a little bit late? Got everybody? All right, let's dive in. So we're going to do our first day. We're in week 1. I got the Zoom stuff kind of in my way to move it around a little bit. And today we're going to do a course introduction and setup of the tool that we're going to use. I sent out an email earlier to everybody that was on the invitation that had links to Python Anywhere. And we'll talk about a little bit more about what that is, how to use it. If you haven't signed up, we'll have some time to do that as we go. But this is generally what we're going to cover today. So here's our agenda. We're going to do a quick overview, talk a little bit of logistics, talk about the purpose of the course, what we're going to do overall in the course, and then we'll have a break. And it's the only break that we have scheduled in any of the lectures, quote unquote. And the idea here is, hopefully in the first 20-ish minutes, we'll give you some inspiration, and we're going to send out in this time. It gives me a chance to send out to all of you a list of free coding resources that we've put together that we think are exceptionally helpful for beginners, that cover the things that we're going to cover. We're going to refer to it throughout the course. And I want to email that out to you. And I'm also going to send out a link to our Discord server that I encourage you all to get on. And we'll put all of our resources, the recordings from classes, any documentation that we have from any class that we do. If there's documentation, we'll post it up in there. It can be found in there. And it'll also have folks, veterans from other courses that have taken the course previously, that are, alumni of Hired Labs. They're in there as well. So we're hoping to kind of connect everybody, and that's what we're going to do over the break. And then it also gives you time to slide out if this isn't for you. If after the introduction and we talk about what we're going to do, you're like, you know what, this doesn't sound like something I want to do. That break is an easy time to slide out, even though we're not in person. So it's not really awkward to just jump off a call. It'll give you kind of a clean moment to do that as well. After the break, when we come back, anybody that does come back stays with us. We're going to dive right in. We'll talk about programming languages, what that even means. We'll talk about the systems that we're going to use, particularly Linux and our command line interface. And then we'll go into the Python Anywhere. We'll talk about the platform, what it is, do a walkthrough, and we'll start getting hands-on today. So I encourage you all in that break time, if you have not already signed up for Python Anywhere, I encourage you to do it then. We'll talk more about what it is, but it's free. And when we go to the hands-on practice, this is going to be kind of the structure of every class day. We're going to do some sort of theory, talk, bring up an idea, and then we'll get hands-on with it. Quick case, just note, I would prefer you take yourself off of mute and put things in chat. Josh Rice, I see your question about, are we going to do emulators for a Linux system? Can you explain a little bit what do you mean by that, to make sure I'm answering the right question?
Yeah, something that DeVry did when for online learning is, if you're going to be using a certain operating system like Linux, they just send us out a code on like Azure and launch up a
cool
false system, if you will.
I get you. Yeah, so that's what Python Anywhere is. It's going to be a full Linux instance that you just have that's cloud-based, and we'll step through that. That's a good question though, but it is a full like Linux thing that you're accessing remotely. All right. So any other questions before we slide in through our course overview and kind of what we're going to be doing? All right, excellent. So with all that, I got you all hyped to be here. Nobody's thanked it. I'm going to start off by this little tagline saying I have nothing to teach you. This isn't entirely just being cheeky. This is kind of really the teachings that I've gotten from some stories, and I'm not a Buddhist. I'm not trying to sell you on these ideas, but I like some of the stories. And one of the recurring themes is that they have this teacher, this master in there. I'm not trying to position myself as that, but students come to them, and the ultimate lesson is that the lesson was already there, right? That they already had what they needed. It was just part of the universe. That's really what we're doing here, is that all the things that we use are free, they're accessible. None of it is stuff that we have that's proprietary that we're locking down and you couldn't have accessed already. So what we're going to do is walk through in a progression of things, but it's really just showing you these things are not ours to be teaching you. They're ours to be sharing, maybe pointing in the right direction. But what concretely will we be doing? So we're going to do the same things at paid coding bootcamp to a certain extent, right? So all coding bootcamps are different. I highly encourage you to look into other ones, but I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't pay for it. I've paid for that before. I don't think it's a good idea. We'll get more into sort of my feelings on that and why we started doing this. But we strive to do the similar things here, where we go through a progression of simple ideas to more complex ideas. We try to make things accessible for folks. Concretely, we're going to build a fully functional web app totally from scratch. In that instance, Python Anywhere that I was mentioning, we're going to set up here soon and start playing around with. We're going to be in there creating the files, the directories, and everything that will be a web application using Python and a framework called Django that is just written in Python. Intangibly, though, we are trying to get us to a point where code is demystified for everyone. A lot of people think this is something that only math whizzes in their ivory towers are able to do, and that's absolutely not the case. So we want to make this something that seems like it is accessible, even if you've thought or been told that it's something you can't possibly do because you're not smart enough or your ASVAB score wasn't high enough or whatever the case is. Coding is absolutely something that everyone can do, and I really want to encourage you to do that, right? And we want to give, again, you the tools to build anything. These tools are out there. So what we really want to do is show you practical skills on how to tie this stuff together, where it fits in, and how to actually use it so that you can do something with it, right? So we put give in parentheses because, again, it's not any of our stuff. We're pointing you to things that are accessible, that are already out there. And like I mentioned before, we encourage you to stay in touch with us throughout this course, but then beyond. If you want to come back for another course, now that you've been, approved and cleared to be part of Hired Labs, you can come back and do another course in the future. If this is too fast or you just want to redo something, you're absolutely welcome to do that. I mentioned the other services and whatnot, but for this particular course, stay in touch with the other folks as you work on projects, as you go different ways. Stay in touch with people, stay in touch with each other. This is really the purpose of what we're doing here, is try to connect everybody who is like-minded, similarly going through transitions or learning how to do this. Maybe at the same starting point. It's really helpful to bounce those sorts of questions that are going to come up in this class off of people in the same space.
Hey, can I just add something?
Sure.
Or maybe underline something
Yeah.
to the rest of the guys? What Jeff said, that anybody can do this, and it's absolutely true in my experience, and I hope you guys all hear that it's not, he's just not just blowing smoke. I had an automation team of 78 people. A bulk of them were guys who used to go out and install internet connections at businesses, and then they would come back to the office sometimes and provision the systems. And what we took those guys that were they called themselves monkeys, and we put them through training to be able to develop to that automation tool. So we automated all of those work that they used to do before. They all stepped up in their careers, and there was some real rocks in there, and they were all great guys. But it's absolutely true that this is not something that's beyond the reach of a normal human being. So
nice. Thanks for that, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. Cool. So I think a lot of you, when you filled out the pre-course survey, you hammered some of these reasons as why learn to code, right? The first and foremost, it's very highly paid. It's in demand, right? It's one of those things that you can get paid well learning how to do these things. But that is not just for developers, right? You don't have to use these skills as a developer in a development seat. Talk a little bit about that. That's one of the things. I've never sat the seat of a developer, even though I've gotten paid quite well doing these things. And then anything can be built, really, if you know how to do it, if you know the basics and you know where things are. And we're going to use a certain set of tools in this course, but the patterns that we follow and the patterns that I'm going to try to introduce you to can be use other tools and follow those same patterns, right? So you can go out and learn how to do other things and build basically whatever you want to once you get this basic idea down. And you can take that in any direction you like. So with that, we're going to slide into the course requirements. This is going to be a comprehensive list of everything you're going to need for this course. All right, so you need the ability to read and write. So hopefully, since we've been doing things through email and websites with text interfaces, you can do that. But again, if you can read and write email, you should be able to you should be able to write code. And we highlighted read because you're going to spend way more time reading than writing. You're going to be reading code, either your own or somebody else's. You're going to be reading documentation and examples and all sorts of things. So reading is by far more important than writing. When we say writing, we don't have to be novelists or anything like that. You do have to know the syntax of a language. We'll talk about some of those things and teach some syntax of Python specifically. But again, reading and understanding is by far most important thing, because then you can use other people's code in your code base. You can try out other, tools that are out there. And if you know how to plug them in and hook them up, then you can use them. And especially with things like text generative AI, you don't need to be able to produce the code yourself and remember exactly how to write everything. If you can read a prompt and understand what the code is saying to you and how to use it, that's going to be a really, really valuable skill. So that's by far one of the things I recommend to focus on as you do this. So you're going to need an internet connection. Oh, I'm sorry, desire. Second thing, you have to want to do it, because if you don't do it, if you think about real boot camp, when you were told to run or told to do push-ups or whatever it was, if you didn't do it and you didn't move your body, you had no desire to do it, it wasn't going to happen. It doesn't matter how much somebody was going to yell at you, right? Same thing here. I'm not going to twist your arm. It's up to you to actually want to do it. Outside of that, you need an internet connection for a lot of the things that we're going to be doing in this class. The Python Anywhere is cloud-based. All the tools that we use are cloud-based. Everything we send is going to be cloud-based. So it doesn't have to be a specific device you are on. You can access it from different devices. One of the purposes of that is for ease. We don't have to download and make sure everybody's got the same versions of things. It's one set of things that we access at Python Anywhere. But it's also because veterans have higher rates of being incarcerated, being homeless, transitioning out of those areas, may not have access to a computer of their own, but can access a community place where they can access a computer and an internet connection, and that's all they have. And this work can stay between from one place to the next. So this is to facilitate those things and reduce the barriers to entry for any kind of coding, right? So internet connection is important. The device is not. Last one is discipline. So we got 6 weeks together. That's 12 classes, hour and a half each. That's not a lot of time. You're going to have to do this on your own in between. They're going to leave you with things each day to work on. And we're going to build together towards something, but it's going to take practice outside of that. We're going to give you this list of resources that I've mentioned and encourage you to go and dig in further. Make this a daily habit. Do like 10, 15 minutes every day. You'll get really good at it really fast, but it takes that kind of discipline to do it, right? You'll notice on this list, I said it was comprehensive. We don't have any math. We're not going to require you to do any math. We'll do a little kind of mathy stuff, use some numbers today, but it's not huge. And it's not like you're going to be doing equations or calculations or anything like that. And we already talked about the particular equipment. You don't have to have a specific device. We do encourage you to be hands-on. So watching on a cell phone or just listening this probably isn't the best course for that. I want you to be able to write along with it, but that's about it. Any questions on the course requirements? Cool. So then cost. So this is going to cost you nothing. There'll be no cost at all. A lot of the things that we use, we'll try to pitch you on some sort of upgraded version. It's absolutely not necessary, and we don't endorse any of those just because we put it on their list. We put them on the list because they have a free version that is more than enough to get any beginner going on all the things that we're talking about. So at no point are you going to be asked to pay for anything from us in here, and we don't endorse any particular tool as a payment option either. And that includes Python Anywhere. It's free. They have a free tier to work just fine for us. It will cost you some time and effort if you want to do it. Again, the time to come to classes. Hopefully you do come to classes. We'll be recording these and posting them. So if you can't make it, you can watch one to catch up. You can rewatch them if we went over something too quickly. But it is best to come, ask questions live, interact with your classmates, all that sort of stuff. And then feedback. So we're a fairly young organization. We're just getting going. You all are part of the 4th cohort this year. And we'd like to keep going, but we really need feedback from all of you. If you decide that this isn't for you, we want to know why. If we want to decide that this is, we could have improved certain things, please let us know. We'll ask for feedback, but don't hesitate. If something comes up, email me, let me know, email the team, whatever you want to do. We love feedback. All right. So how are we going to do this? So we're going to treat this kind of like regular boot camp in basic training, in the sense that we're trying to get everyone trained up to a very basic level. It's not going to be comprehensive. No one's going to be going from here to being fully ready to be a developer in 6 weeks. That's way too fast. The idea is to get you started. And then from there, you can decide where you would like to focus your next efforts of learning, right? If you want to go further down the route of web development, you've got a basis for that. If you want to use Python to do something else like machine learning or data science or any of those sorts of things, you have a basic beginning point to start diving into those as well. So that is our goal here. So 6 weeks, I've mentioned a couple of times, instruction like we're doing now. We're going to talk about something, maybe have a couple of slides. I try to keep those to a minimum. This is probably our longest slide day. And then we're going to have some hands-on practice. So again, today we will be writing, we will be doing some things. But it is self-paced, right? So we've got milestones along the way. But again, if you're finding this is very fast, you can go slower. That's okay. Just, keep doing it every day and come to class when you can, even if you're a little bit behind, and just kind of watch the concepts and write as you do. That's totally fine to not be finished in like the end of 6 weeks. We're not just going to kick you out and say, that's it. We don't want to hear from you again. We're not going to give you an F. This is really just to facilitate the learning and get you to the point where you have your own web application, even if that takes you longer than 6 weeks. So this is really the thing. Practice, ask questions, work together, stay in touch. This is how we're going to do it, right? So general syllabus for the 6 weeks, we're in week 1. We're going to go over programming foundations. We're going to talk about real basic stuff about a computer, which a lot of it should be fairly, common knowledge. We're going to make sure we have a solid base for it, though. We're going to talk about languages, what that means to be a computer language, which languages we're going to use, why we use them. Next week is kind of our most data science-y type week. We'll talk a little bit about algorithms and data structures, but we will not dive very deeply into either. That is an entire world of things. That's why people have degrees that take several years to do, because that's really the complex part of it. This is where math would be. We're not going to need a lot of it. We're just going to talk about these concepts and show you some tools to practice them and learn more about them. And then in week 3, we start actual web development. We'll start building our app, and we start with the foundations, start talking about, what it is to be a web application, all those sorts of things, basics of the web. And then in week 4, we're going to focus on the front end. So all the things that users interact with and the kind of things that you look at. And then we'll talk about our backend design and development and build the functionality of our web application. And then in the final week, we'll wrap it up. We'll finish the first day of that last week. And then we'll have some more advanced topics, including things like collaborative coding using Git and version control systems like that, and those sorts of things that are important to understand for working on and managing projects of all size. So any questions about this syllabus or anything we've covered up to now?
What is the function of the app we're going to be building?
Excellent question. Let me see what my next slide is. So what we can do is I can show you that right now. This is, I kept this alive from last time. I'm going to destroy this at the break, but this is the site we're going to build. And it's going to be a couple of pages. It's not beautiful. This isn't a front-end design class. This is a functionality to really show you how to build this thing. We could build our application in one page, but to have this navigation up here is the idea. Demonstratively, we'll have several pages. So we'll have a home page, I'll have a quick about page. This to-do list is the application we're actually going to make. So the concept here is that it is representative of a very simple thing that shows all the operations that are going to be in pretty much any application. Specifically, that's creating, reading, updating, and deleting some sort of entity. So to-do list is a very simple interaction for that. So you see we have some sort of task in here right now that's telling me to get my life together. So this is the read operation. It's showing us what's already there. We can also add tasks. So we can just say another, if I can spell, apparently I can't. So another task, we'll give it a due date of some sort. So we can add those tasks. We can make changes to these tasks. So this is updating them. And then we can delete tasks. So if we want to delete something, this little JavaScript popped up that says, hey, are you sure you want to delete that? And we'll say, yeah, we do. And it'll get rid of it. So this is what we're going to build. And those 4 functions, the create, read, update, and delete, also known as CRUD, are the 4 things that we're going to show that really are what all applications are. Does this answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Cool. So any other questions before we go on to this? On who the hell am I even to be talking about this? All right, great. So I am also self-taught. It's one of those things that I started years and years and years ago. I mentioned that I was a linguist. I came out of the military, went into college with a plan to continue being an interpreter, and life being what it is, I switched gears really fast at the end of my senior year and ended up stumbling into tech sales. And while I was working at a number of different startups, one of them I kind of got enamored with I kept hearing about programming languages and asked somebody there how much like human languages they are. Turns out they're not, but it kind of got me down this road. And so I realized that I could do it. I'm not exactly a professional developer. I haven't been, like a front end full stack developer or anything like that, but I have been paid very well doing a number of different program manager functions, some freelance work as, a number of different things, designing systems, sometimes writing code, sometimes just building tools that automate my team's work or my personal work, that have gotten me promoted or that I've created for some other purpose that's been sold or something like that. So these are things that are very useful that I've found. I've also tried these paid coding boot camps. I paid for one once. And I think it's kind of snake oil. Honestly, the people in there had no discipline, and the information that they were giving us was like literally sending us to similar stuff that I'm going to show you on this free coding resources, like YouTube videos and other stuff that's already out there and free. And I was like, well, then what do you got? And the instructor had only done a coding boot camp. And so when he asked him questions, he would just say, go look it up. And he didn't have any experience to give you anything. So I fully encourage you to go other places, do other boot camps besides this one. We'll show you some places that have boot camps. I'm not sure how many of them are totally free, but there are organizations that will pay for at least part of veterans training in this regard. I know some of them here in the Bay Area. I know like Goodwill in San Francisco does it. Swords to Plowshares here in the Bay Area does it. There may be some folks in your local areas that do it as well if you're in other places. So I definitely recommended those, but I don't think anyone should come out of pocket for this. And I believe in you all as veterans. There's a reason we do this just for veterans, not because you're better people or anything. I don't know if anyone's read Starship Troopers, but one of the concepts in there is why veterans are treated in a certain way is that we have this understanding of kind of the common good over the individual good, the good of the group over the good of the individual. We also understand some basic things like following checklists, and we have a higher technical aptitude than our peers, regardless of what MOS we had when we were in the military. So all these things align us well to being able to do what's out there. We're more disciplined. We take training more. So again, I believe in all of you being able to do this. That's why I think you should listen to me, because I believe in you. All right. So with that, we're going to take this break. I've been promising you. I'm going to send you this resource list and give you some time to sign up for Python Anywhere. I've got 1833. We'll say about 10 minutes. We'll come back and we'll get going again. If anybody has questions, feel free to ask them now, but I'm going to go ahead and start running the clock, so to speak, on that break. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can send this email as well.
So what's it look like as far as offline resources?
In what sense of offline do you mean?
Like, is there something you can just download and mess with, or?
Yeah, there are a couple of really good reading resources on there that I definitely recommend that there are, could be considered that kind of thing, like PDFs or that kind of thing.
Okay.
I don't know of any other than that. What would be most of the things are online in some capacity. And outside of books, I haven't really done any kind of offline training that I would be able to recommend for you.
Okay.
feel like I'm not answering your question, but that's the best answer we got.
Well, I grew up in the jungle, so you
Yeah.
know, I don't trust internet
I
to
get
the
you.
full extent. All right.
From your experience, would Code Academy be a good like post boot camp kind of intermediate training platform?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Code Academy is great.
All right.
They've got all kinds of levels of stuff too. I kind of prefer free freecodecamp.org.
Free Code Camp.
Yeah, yeah, it's on the list of resources, like the top one. It's in my opinion, it's by far one of the best. It's totally free, and it's got all kinds of stuff. And they do little what's it called? Like certifications of different kinds on specific skills. So they have like certifications for web development or scientific Python or whatever the case may be.
You send out those resources already? Oh, yep.
Yep. Yeah, I sent an
My
email.
my email's just a bit slow.
Sure. Yeah, and we're not going to spend a huge amount of time going like through that list of resources right now, but if you got questions, definitely ask me. We're going to refer to it kind of as we go. And I'll point out a few things as we use them. We'll use them at different points in the class. But it's got tons of stuff. And then down at the very, very bottom of it, whenever you do open it up, there's a link to like this Reddit post that's just like another repository of this same kind of stuff. So it's just huge. There's endless amounts of just free things out there to learn. I mean, you could be going from one class to another all day long. The other one, I think the one thing I do kind of want to highlight is anybody that's not aware of LinkedIn giving free premium to veterans for a year. If you haven't looked into that, it's definitely worth it. And that comes with LinkedIn Learning, and those classes are stellar. They bought this company called lynda.com or something that did online learning things. Their platform for learning is really good. They have all kinds of really good stuff in there. So if you can get into the LinkedIn Learning one, I recommend that as well. The format's good, the content's good, and it's not just coding stuff. Like that's all kinds of stuff they got in there.
So Jeff, you think at the end of this whole course, you'll direct us toward finding opportunities, employment opportunities?
Yeah, man, that's the idea. I'm hoping to.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the ideas with the specific things that we teach. We'll definitely talk as we go on this, but the decisions that we made on the things that we use are things that we use internally. And so we get to the end of this course, we're hoping you'll like contribute to our projects and work on the stuff that we have as well as a way to build your portfolio in that effort of finding a role. If this is something you want to do seriously, if you do want to be a developer, we have plenty of work to do. And all of our stuff is open source, and we'll get to what that means generally and like how you interact with open source stuff, and absolutely encourage you to do it. But then the other side of Hired Labs that's separate from this with resumes and the job search is focused exactly on that piece, on really helping veterans find some sort of meaningful work, whether it's in this road or somewhere else.
Great. You mentioned AI, and that reminded me. So, I do a little day trading, nothing too serious, but in TradingView they use PineScript. I know nothing about PineScript, but I used AI to help me write a script so I could create my own indicator. It actually
nice.
worked.
nice.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
use it anymore, but
okay.
But
and that's exactly
AI is great.
Yeah, that's exactly how I use GitHub's Copilot all the time, and it's really good. And I mean, even ChatGPT, if you just use some of that, even for like explaining stuff, you could just take a piece of code, copy it, and put it in ChatGPT and be like, explain this to me. and it'll explain it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, it'll explain it really clearly. And you can even say in there, and we'll do this on Thursday when we start running our own Python scripts. You can just go in there, like once we start the framework that we're going to set up, you just go into ChatGPT and be like, write me a script that does whatever. And if you know how to run it, which we're going to go over, then you can just take that script and try it out and see if it works, and then like kind of make the little changes you need to make. So the text generative AI stuff is really, really helpful in creating something is a really good starting point. It's accelerated our development efforts just massively. So yeah, I'm a big fan.
I just wanted to see if there's any way you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we got you. There's a little bit of feedback still, but it's not as bad as when you first started talking.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
Hey.
I didn't realize my computers were all on around the house. Like, yeah.
Stuff happens.
Yeah, man.
Tech is evil. Welcome, our robot overlords.
Exactly. Right. We can, if everybody's back, we can go ahead and get rolling, even though we're a couple minutes short of the 10. I don't think we need a full 10 for all of that. If everybody's here, we can dive back in. Thanks everybody for staying. That did. And let's dive into the actual course content. So we might go a little over. Hopefully we don't go too over time. I'm gonna try to keep it close today. But again, this is where we're normally gonna start. We're gonna have some sort of slide thing, and then we'll go into some concepts. So this should be our short 250 slides. No, I've just got a few left. So we're gonna start by defining some terms, right? So what is coding, programming in general? So the concept of written directions just to execute a process. That's all we're doing. So we want to keep this in mind. Very simple. That as a practice, again, it's reading and writing. So reading is most important. We'll definitely be writing, but reading is absolutely more important. And as a profession, some of you asked about professionally, treat this like a trade, right? So it's the same thing as if you're learning to weld or be an electrician or any of those sorts of things. You'll learn some basic skills. There's going to be a million routes you can go into on which trade you want to get into or which piece of this you want to do. Like we have some folks on here that are infrastructure or, you know, on the design or the leading of teams or any of those different aspects of it. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this. And if you approach it in that same way of like, I'm going to refine and focus on one area, do one sort of thing, and constantly learning and leveling up, it's the same idea. So let's go through some computing basics. We're going to cover very quickly hardware. We're not going to go deep into any of these topics, but these are things that we need to keep in mind as we work. So we're going to talk about the operating systems, what needs to be kept in mind in there, file systems and management. We'll talk a little bit about how that works. User interfaces. So graphical user interface, or GUI, which I know is a term that most people probably heard, but this is all the things that folks can look at, poke around, the drop downs, the buttons, when you're clicking a mouse and interacting with it like that. That's your graphical user interface. What we're going to be working on most of the time is a command line interface, or CLI. So we're going to be writing and picturing a lot of things in our head. So we got to get in the habit of picturing stuff that you may not be able to see, but most everything we do, we can go over and do it in some sort of graphical user interface. As developers, you're going to be building graphical user interfaces. That's like the task thing that I showed you earlier, the app that we're going to make. We're going to build that interface for people to push the buttons, right? Using a command line interface to build that. And then languages. This is the last thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk specifically about what languages are, what that means, how they differentiate from human languages, if they do, when we talk about human versus machine languages. So the hardware to be relevant, again, this is stuff I'm sure everyone here has heard of, but we want to make sure we keep it in mind as we go down the road. We're going to be talking about these things as we go. So the central processing unit, this is where the computer does what it does. The tagline of this section is computers are stupid. They do one thing really quickly. They're not smart. They're not intelligent. They calculate, they add really, really, really fast. That's it, right? They'll stare at you blankly, but this is if you don't give it directions on what to do. But this is where that addition, the calculations, this is where that happens. So CPU, memory versus storage. So real quickly, we'll talk more about this as we go, but memory is short-term, things that you don't want to save, versus storage is long-term, things that you want to keep for a long time. So these three aspects, the CPU, memory, and storage, are things while you're creating your software, your programs, you're writing your code, you're going to be interacting with these things all the time. They will be concerns for you at different levels. We'll talk about what that means, what concerns you have, when it comes to it. The other things that are very relevant are your inputs and outputs. So
Are you
anything that
sharing, Jeff?
am I not sharing my screen?
No, it's nice to watch you talk, but I think you're.
I'm glad you told me that because I thought I was sharing my screen. How about now? Am I sharing my screen now?
I saw the screen.
I think I am sharing my screen. Are you not
Yeah,
seeing it? Right?
I can see
Yeah,
that.
I'm seeing it too.
Okay.
Oh, I found it. I found it.
Okay.
It's me. Yeah.
Okay, good. Man, yeah.
I'm as smart as a computer.
Hey, right on. So it wouldn't have been the first time that I've been just like talking and everybody's kind of like politely nodding. So, I'm glad that thanks for calling it out. All right. So yes, very appropriately, we have the outputs, our screens, and our inputs, our mouse, keyboard, any of those sorts of things, right? So we're keeping these in mind when we make our programs because we'll interact with these things all the time, most often keyboards and screens, but you may want to be dealing with mouse clicks, touches, all those sorts of things, working with cameras. All that's possible to do with coding, and just the concept of inputs and outputs is constant throughout anything you're doing, right? So keep those in mind. Operating systems. So this is just by way of definition. I'm sure we've all talked about operating systems. We know what they are generally, but to put it in some sort of context, it's a set of programs that run other programs, right? So it's the basic thing between our hardware and the things that we interact with. The big ones that we all know are Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. We're going to be using Linux in this course. The Python Anywhere instance that we're going to be touching soon is Linux based. There are a lot of reasons we do that. All programs are run inside some sort of operating system. We got to keep that in mind. But the reason we do Linux is it is very widely used all over the place in all kinds of automated systems, manufacturing, transportation. So if you know how to use Linux, like that is by itself a job. That's a whole career. You could be a Linux administrator. You could do just that. That's a world unto itself. And again, broadly applicable outside of tech specifically in all kinds of places. It's also the pattern. Yep.
Can I ask? Yeah. I'm assuming that when you say we're going to be using Linux, we're running that Python Anywhere within a browser. So it's like a cloud-based or something. So, because I've got an Apple M1. I don't know if there's anything that allows it to do a Linux, right?
Yeah, no, it'll be all browser based, so you don't have to do anything on your machine to run it. But yeah, it's going to give you basically access to like a remote Linux instance, and that's one of the things that makes Linux so cool is that is one of the ways that it's operated a lot. It'll be run on a server, and you just remotely access it. So all you need is a keyboard. And
is that something that we're going to be able to set up on our own in the future? Will we learn something about that too, maybe? Or
no, we're not going to go over that here. I mean, you absolutely could if you want to, but we're not going to go over that in this course now.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And then, so the other thing about Linux is besides being widely applicable and broadly applicable outside of specifically developing, but in automating systems and all kinds of other things out there, it's also the same pattern, the directory structure of a Linux system that we're going to be using and becoming very intimate with is the same structure of the internet. The internet is on Linux. It's run on Linux. So the URLs that we're all familiar with is the exact same as directory structures, the same addresses and all that sort of thing. We'll see those same patterns over and over again. All right, so user interface. We talk about graphical user interface. Again, shouldn't be anything new. This is the pointing and clicking, stuff like mouse, drag and drop, push buttons, command line interface, text-based. You got to read and write everything. This is where we're going to spend our time. We're going to be writing a lot. We're going to be reading a lot. And again, be just keyboard and a screen. That's the beauty of it. That's why it's a lot of times, even things that you can do with a GUI, once you get good at doing them in command line interface, you may prefer doing them that way because it's just a lot faster. All right, so programming languages. This is where I definitely nerd out as a linguist, and like to spend more time than I probably should. But this really beautiful chart is to show from top to bottom a list of languages that are closer to human languages, like English, like the language we're using now, and at the bottom, closer to machine languages or binary, which we'll talk about here in a minute. Now, all these languages at some point have to be boiled down or compiled down into machine language for the machine to do anything with it. But we as humans can read and write in these languages. And the closer they get to human language, the easier they are for humans to read, but the harder they are for machines to read. So it has to do more work to get it from the top of the list to binary than it does to get from the bottom of the list. So we are going to be using two languages towards the top of the list, mostly Python, a little bit of JavaScript because we're doing web application. It's good to give the acknowledgement to JavaScript. It is really the standard for web. It makes websites interesting. All these languages in green, though, some of them are somewhat specific, like for a particular use, but they can all be considered programming languages in the sense that they can be used to do a lot of the same stuff that we're going to do with Python. So Python, in addition to being a really good starting point for any beginner, because it is closest to human language as we can, you can almost read it in natural English and understand what's happening, kind of. It also is broadly applicable outside of web development, right? So we could do a lot of things we're doing in this course just in JavaScript or in a more now popular TypeScript that's becoming very popular. But Python can be used in data science, machine learning, all kinds of other places, not just web development. It's not even actually most known for web development, even though there are plenty of big companies like Netflix and Instagram and stuff like that that use the same technology, the Django, the framework that we're going to use that's in Python. They use the same stuff. So it is possible, even though JavaScript's a little bit more popular for web things. These ones in red are what are called specialized languages. So they don't have the same ability as the programming languages. They're not really programming languages. They are for just a very specific purpose. So there's going to be SQL or SQL, which is for interacting with databases. And we'll talk a little bit about it. We're not going to do a ton of SQL, but we'll do some basic SQL because we will be interacting with a relational database. And that's really what SQL is for. Then there's HTML and CSS, which are our internet standards. Again, we're doing a web application that you can't, I mean, maybe, but it'd be really hard to avoid HTML and CSS. HTML is like your layouts. CSS is going to be your fonts, color schemes, those sorts of things. And then we're also going to be doing some what's called bash commands, right? This is the Linux interaction part. We're not doing shell scripting exactly, but we're going to be typing some commands directly into a bash console. Any questions about this?
What exactly do you mean by saying framework for?
Good question. Yeah. So that's something we're going to talk more about it next week, but, or a week after actually. But so, yeah, so a framework typically is written in a language. So Python is the root language that's written in, but then there are really common things that everyone does in a certain context. Like in a web application, say you want users to log in and you want to have some sort of networking stuff that's in there. A framework will have those parts built in, right? So if you use a web framework, it'll have a way for users to log in. So you don't have to write all that stuff directly for yourself. And you just kind of take those parts and start with pre-made code.
So it's kind of like a template.
Yeah, it's kind of like a template. Yeah, but it's a little deeper than that. But we'll be very intimate with this as we go.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're not quite grasping that concept yet, don't worry, we'll get deeper into it. But does that kind of answer your question for now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Any other questions before we move on this language piece? Cool. All right, so real quick about binary.
I got one.
Oh yeah, what's up?
Well, not so much. I guess not so much language, but the tool you use to write the languages.
Mhm.
I like to use Vim.
Yep,
That
we're going to
okay?
be using that. Yep, we'll be using that. Yeah. We'll get into that. I'm glad you like it.
Okay.
That's actually not many people say that they like that. So we're actually gonna get to that today, and hopefully some folks will get stuck in it. But yeah, I'm glad you bring that up. And we'll talk for those of you that don't know Vim.
It's not so much.
Go ahead.
It's not so much that I like it. It's more of in cybersecurity. We're trained to, from a DoD aspect.
Yeah.
In the military, in the army, you're trained to live off the land. Maybe a situation where you have to live off the land, and we use those same frameworks and protocols in cyber.
I get you. Yeah, and that makes sense. And I'm going to show you again that it's that Vim, the thing you're talking about. So this, for anybody that doesn't know, is a text editor that's built into a command line interface, and we're actually going to use it here in a minute when we get over to Python Anywhere, and we'll do that exact thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, but just a little bit ahead of time. All right, so real quickly, we're going to go through binary encoding and how it works for everyone to get an idea of it. But again, I don't want anyone to get wrapped around the axle on understanding all the math behind it. This is the most math we're going to do. Don't panic. So this is binary. This is a binary number. We're going to use the same number over and over again. You can read it left to right as 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0. Each of these numbers, the 1 and 0, is called a bit. So a single 1 or 0 is a bit. 8 of these arranged together is a byte. This is how computers store, process, understand information, is this. Right? So we talk about things in terms of how many bytes it uses, and a byte is a reference to this many bits. And each bit can be a 1 or a 0. So generally speaking, binary can be thought of in similar terms as what base 10 and the way that we all are used to the numbers, where if we think back to grade school and each number had a place, right? So if you have a number that's like 10,051, there's a ones place, a tens place, a hundreds place, and so on, going from right to left, right? So you have your numbers in your ones place. There are 10 digits available, 0 to 9. Once you get to 9, you put a 0 in the ones place and put a 1 in the tens place, right? We all know this. Hundreds is 1 and 0 zeros, right? 99 is the last number. Same thing in binary, except there are only 2 numbers. So the first space, as soon as you need to get to 2, you have to move over to the next space, right? So this at the bottom shows that same number we had again. The third row here, kind of the middle row in between with the 2 to the power of something, is showing which place this is, because each of these are base 2. So in the first place is 2 to the 1 or 2. The 2 to the 0 is 1, right? And what we do with this is if we can convert between the binary at the top into a decimal number at the bottom. We do that by taking whatever number's in the top and comparing it to its equivalent at the bottom. If it's a 1 at the top, then we take that number at the bottom and add it together, just like this. So everywhere there's a 1, we just follow this chart down. We write, see, we got a 64 over here. We got an 8. We got a 4, a 2. Add all those things up. The rest are zeros. And we get 78. So this is going between binary and base 10. I'm sure you're thinking, great, why would we do that? The Army came up with this system called ASCII. And this is a chart that encodes each of the characters that English uses, along with spaces, special characters, and all those sorts of things, and assigns it a decimal number. Here, this chart has a few things. The decimal is the far left. Then there's this hexadecimal, which we're not going to use. It's another numbering system. The binary in green that we're talking about. Then there's this octal number, which again, numbering system we're not going to use. And then over on the right is the character. And I've blown up this thing down at the bottom that has a capital N. So 78 in decimal, or this 1001110, is a capital N. So when you type in capital N in your computer, it's breaking that down to this binary to understand it. Everybody tracking on this? This making sense? Mm-hmm. Any questions about this? Let me get some. Greg, I like that reaction, like the kinda. That's an honest reaction. Anybody have any questions that jump to mind now about this?
I'm taking your word for it, and I'm going to go back and figure out what you said. But I know I've got an apostrophe in my last name, and it's been the bane of my existence because I think it's used as a code piece too. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That absolutely would do it. Yeah, I get you. All right, cool. So this is, again, this covers all of the English characters, everything you need to write in English. And this was developed, I want to say, I don't know, 60s, 70s by the Army. Since then, it has been expanded. So you will run into this American Standard Code for Information Interchange, or ASCII. You'll see that frequently. But as a more common internet standard now is what's called Uniform Transformation Format 8-bit, or UTF-8. That's a full, if you look back at that ASCII chart, all the English characters only take up 7 bits, or 7 ones and zeros. They extended out to fill out that 8th bit, and we can use other character sets like Chinese or Cyrillic or Hebrew or emojis and all that kind of stuff. That's what Unicode, or UTF-8, that's what that encoding does. So does this all make sense? Anybody have any questions about encodings between binary and what those are? All right. So we're going to see these as we go. And it's good just keep in mind, we'll reference back to it as we go. All right, last little bit we want to talk about before we go over and get hands-on with things is our Linux command line interface and file system basics. And it's going to be extremely basic. This is the last slide. This is it. And what I want to show you here is the structure of a Linux file system. And we're going to have access to this very soon. But there isn't a great way to picture it and see it. This is kind of the best thing that I've found. So I want to have this all up for you to look at, get some sense of it. We're going to be navigating this and traversing it. So I'm going to explain a little bit of what it is, what we're looking at. This top part / is the root, right? It's called root. It is the root of the Linux system. It is the very base directory. And it contains all these other subdirectories, which are standard on the second row underneath this /, this etc, dev, home, usr, and var. Those are standard directories in a Linux environment. Definitely, I encourage anyone that cares to read about this and find out more about it. It's a whole world unto itself. we're not going to talk about all these subdirectories except for the home directory. Whereas you see down here in this chart, there are 3 users that are inside of it. And this is basically how Linux systems are used in professional settings or anywhere else, where each user will have their own. The administrator will have access to all this root stuff. And then each person that logs in would only see their own, like Jono here on the left would have their own work and photos folder or directory underneath it. And I guess Mako and Corey would also have those as well, right? So these are 3 distinct users. And what we're going to be in when we work is going to start off in one of these. You will have your own username, but it will trace back to this home. So /home, imagine a slash after home, and then username /. That is the directory that you're going to be in when you start in your home working directory. And I want to have this up here as picture because we're going to move up and down in these directories. I'll show you ways to see where you are, even in a command line interface. But I want to make sure that you kind of understand this in a hierarchical level of depth with the root at the top like this. Any questions about this structure?
Is the slash before or after the home?
I love it. Yeah. So the first slash is going to be before it. So the slash by itself is the name of the root directory, right? So it'll be /home/ username /, right? So the very first thing that starts in a Linux file system or directory path is going to be the slash. Good question. All right. Anything else? Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump out of this slide deck. I told you that's all we've got. And I sent the free coding resources. So anybody that did not get that, definitely let me know. But they're also pinned in the Discord server. I saw a few people had joined. If you haven't, do that as well. So I want to leave. And we're going to go over to our Python Anywhere instance. And then when you log in, you should be taken to a page that looks like this. This is your dashboard. And I'm going to give you a quick orientation on what we're looking at here and kind of where we're going to go. Up here at the top, we've got links to our dashboard, consoles, files, web, all those sorts of things. We're not going to do a lot with the tasks and databases, but we will use the other ones. So consoles, we'll go to that soon. Files is, again, a way you can look at your file system in sort of a GUI way. You can make files and directories there in a graphical user interface. The web tab is where we're going to make our web application when we do that. Tasks, just so you're aware of what it is not for like a task list or a to-do list like we're going to make. It's for asynchronous tasks that if you want to make something like, say you have an API call that might take some time and you don't want your site to crash, that's what tasks would be good for, but we're not going to set those up in this class. So that's kind of out of scope for us. I encourage you to play around with it later. And databases, we're just going to use what comes standard with framework. Again, I'm using this framework term again. There's something built into it that's a very small database used for development that we're just going to rely on for our course. But it's very easy to use a little bit more secure database that these folks provide at Python Anywhere for free, a MySQL database instance. And that's not something that we're going to do in this course either. We're not going to set that up, but it's very straightforward and you can follow documentation to do that. So these tasks and databases, out of scope, but I encourage you all to look at those. The other quick things I want to talk about here before we get any further is on the dashboard, you're going to have a CPU usage and it'll show you how much you've used out of a quota that you have. That's good for every 5 or 8 hours, I think, something like that. And it resets every 8 hours. You can go over on this and it's not really going to break anything. I've done it a couple of times. It just slows you down. If you end up using too much CPU, it'll say, hey, don't do that. Your stuff's now slow. And then you're going to have a little bit of file storage. That's here. Not a lot. You've got only 512 megabytes, which isn't huge. And we need about 25% for the course. So you're welcome to do what you like with this. Upload things if you feel the need to, but just kind of reserve 25% for this. And before we get hands on today, one thing I'd like to do, and it's a possibility that it's an option for all of you, is you can set me as your instructor through Python Anywhere. This is another one of the reasons we use this platform, is that if you choose to do that, I can then see your files directly, and I could go in directly and see your consoles and things like that without having to set anything up. I could just hop right in there and do it. So for anybody who would like to do that, if you're in Python Anywhere now, you go up to the very top navigation bar above the one that we just talked about. Over on the right-hand side next to Logout, there's an account button. And if you click on account, Actually, before we go, I'm going to copy this because you're going to need my username, which you see is Hired Labs, and I put DIs in drill instructor since, I wasn't a drill instructor. I like to claim that title whenever I can in boot camp. And then 42 because that's my hockey jersey number, and it's also the meaning of life and everything. So that's going to be my username. You're going to need that in a minute. But you go up to account. When you click on this, it'll give you this pitch to upgrade, which we can ignore, but you go across to education, right? You see security, email, education. There's API and some other stuff. Click on education. And then about midway down the page will be in red. It'll say enter your teacher's username. And you take that username that I just put in the Zoom chat and just drop that in here by clicking on it and the little check mark to save it once you do. And then if you choose to do that, I will then be able to see you and your stuff. So this will also see if you chose some wacky username. It'll come up on my list. That's the only way I'm going to be able to identify you. So hopefully you chose something that I can identify you with. If not, I'll just ask you what your username is, which is no problem.
You're gonna call us out.
Yeah. I can. If you have something embarrassing, I can not refresh my browser right now to see who's added themselves. But I'm going to do that anyway. So, you know what? It's your own fault. All right. So, yeah, season folks have already added me. Yeah. All right. So, season folks added me, which is good. Doesn't seem like anything really inappropriate, which is kind of unfortunate. But yes, so we can use that later. If you want me to look at something, I can hop in there and have a look at your actual code and your consoles and all that. All right. Cool. Right on. Thanks for calling out your username, Anthony. I appreciate it. All right, cool. So then once you're done with that, if you choose to, then we're going to go back to our consoles and we're going to get started on what we're going to play around with. So we're going to go over to the consoles tab, click on the consoles up here, right next to dashboard, in between dashboard and files. And it'll take me to this thing that says start new console right up here at the top. Cool. Yep. If you guys want to list your username in chat, that is actually helpful. I appreciate it. I never even thought about doing that, but good call. So start a new console, you have a bunch of options here. So I mentioned that we're going to be doing Python, but we're not going to go directly into any of these Python things. There are maybe reasons you want to look into these. We will access these somewhat directly, but we're going to skip down to this other. Waha. That's right. Other down here, and there's bash written right next to it. So there's two options. There's a MySQL and there's a bash. We're going to do the BASH, maybe even zoom in so it's a little easier. So when I click bash, it is going to start up a console. And it usually gives some little silliness. And then we get into this thing. And this is where we're going to spend a good portion of our time. This is the command line interface. This is what it looks like. Over here, I believe this is Greenwich Mean Time, UTC. Over here, 03 over there. Then you see this little tilde, and that is shorthand for your user directory. So when I showed you the /home/username/, that's what this tilde stands for. It's a shorthand that you can use to reference things sometimes if you want to come back here, if you want to, do further paths on top of this, you can use that tilde as well. But this is also how you know where you are just looking at it. This is a shorthand representation of your user directory. And then this $sign is just the end part. I'm not sure why it's $sign, but it's the end part to show you that you have control of the console. And then this little red block is your cursor. So this is where we are now. We are in our command line interface. So if we want to break out, I'm going to show you a few commands that we can go through. I've been on the fence on whether or not to send this out as a documentation. I haven't in past classes, but if you all have a real strong feeling that you want them, I can. What I encourage you to do, though, is to write along with me, because if you write them here, it'll be saved in what's called your history, and I'll show you how to grab that. And so this is a way of taking notes that if you do it with me, it'll be there forever. Well, not forever, but it'll be there long enough for you to use it again. So the first command that I'm going to write is it's shorthand, but it stands for print working directory. And it's going to be just PWD, all lowercase. Most Linux commands are going to be all lowercase. And it's all connected, no spaces. It doesn't take any arguments or any following words. Anything after that's just PWD. And when I hit enter on that, it'll break out that tilde. So I told you that this tilde shows us this whole thing, /home/hired labs. It should be your username there. And then I think, JT, it was your question asking about trailing slashes. This doesn't list it, but it is there. This is just where we are, so it doesn't show the trailing slash. But there would be a following slash if we had a subdirectory. So this is a way to know where you are right now. This is printing working directory. Working directory is where you are. If you want to move around in directories, you do CD, which is change directory, and you can pick any directory you like. So we can go all the way down to the root directory, do CD slash, and now you see that tilde change to a slash, and I'm in the root directory. So if I do print working directory, it's just going to be a slash. And then if I want to go back to this home username kind of default tilde spot, then I can just do CD with no arguments, no directory listed after it, no path of any kind, and it'll default take me back to my tilde, my kind of home username directory. And we can prove that we're in there by doing print working directory, and then we're there. So that's to see where you are, right? So that's, if you imagine the analogy of if you're on a GUI, you can just see that you have a window in front of you that is like your home directory or something like that. But you can also usually see the contents of those directories. So a way that we do that here on a command line interface is we use the ls command, which is short for list. And we just type in ls, and it should list all the things that are in there. Now you should just have a readme.txt because that comes standard. There shouldn't be much else in there yet. But this also takes what's called flags. So flags are a way to change the behavior or add to the behavior of any command in Linux. And so if we want to see, say, hidden folders or hidden directories, hidden files in here, because this is not showing us our hidden stuff in ls, we do ls space, and then with single dash, and then a letter A. And this is going to do everything that's in there. Now, I probably got more hidden stuff in here than you do, so don't panic if you do this and it looks different than yours. But it should show you a few things possibly that you don't have, like your cache and your bash RC. You should probably have this bash history in there. But this is called a flag, and a lot of Linux commands will take these flags. It'll change the behavior. All right, so before I move on,
what do you say ls stands for?
It stands for list. It's short for list.
Oh.
So it lists everything that's in a directory. And you can take, well, I'll show you that in a second. Before we go any further, I'm going to show you this other cool command that will clean up this screen a little bit, because then we got all this stuff all over the screen, and that annoys me, and it's all the way down at the bottom. So I just type in the word clear, just CLEAR, all lowercase, nothing after it, nothing before it, and hit enter, and it'll just move everything up. So that stuff is still there. It's still in my history someplace, but it's taking it off my screen, clean my screen up. And to show you that it's in my history, we could conveniently type in just the word history. And this is what I was talking about with taking notes. So if you're following along up to now and you've done these things, when you hit history, it should show you at least these commands that we just typed, right? Starting at the print working directory. I've got some other stuff in here. Don't worry about that. Your history won't go back like mine does. But these will be a full list of the commands that we just typed, including history itself. This is saved someplace in a file, right? So you can go find that file. You can look into it. But this is a way to pull it up right here. Just type in the word history, and then you got it. So I'm gonna clear this up again. I clear things all the time. I hate having stuff up on my screen. Another useful thing for any Linux command, a flag that's very helpful, we could use it with ls, is I'm gonna do space and then 2 dashes and then help. So this will give us a manual entry, basically, but it's like an abridged version of it. So when I hit enter on this, it's going to pull up this arguably it's a little bit long. I'm going to zoom out so it fits a little better. But this is the abridged version. I'll show you the longer version of it. The idea here when I scroll up is you'll see my original call right here. It says ls-help. And what this gives us, the first part is usage. And here's the command, ls. And then it says option, which are those flags I showed you. And then files. It could take a path. So you could list the contents of some other directory if you want to pass it to us. The reason I showed you this help command is because if you forget what things are in there, this will explain it to you. So here's that A flag that we used. That's a shorthand for it. You could have done 2 flags and then all. The reason I did that with help is because sometimes -h is help. Sometimes it's not. So --help tends to be more reliable for this kind of thing. But this will remind you of the syntax of a command. This will show you exactly what arguments it takes, the order in which those go. And this is all built in. So this is not something that you need to download or do anything with. Someone clear that up. That's definitely useful. Another equally useful thing for Linux commands is called, I'm gonna keep this kind of zoomed out, is called man, which is short for manual. And it'll give you the manual, the full manual for any of these commands. So if we want to do ls again, just to see what's in there, it's going to similarly print out this whole list of things, but it's going to be the full manual on it. And the interaction here is a little bit different. You don't scroll up and down. We actually lost control of our terminal, and we are now in this manual page. So you see at the very bottom, it says kind of highlighted in white, it says manual page ls1, line 1, press H for help or Q for to quit. That's how we get back out of this. So we can scroll up and down by using the up and down arrows and read to our heart's content all the details of this command. And when we're ready to leave, we just hit Q and it takes us right back to our command line. So those are really helpful ways to get information about any command that you maybe forgot or don't remember the syntax for, or any of those sorts of things. And I'm going to zoom back in so it's easier for everyone to see. Now we don't have all that stuff on there. All right. So the other things that we're going to do a lot of in this course, and that I want to get started with today so you have something to leave and play around with in here, is just basic directory and file manipulation. So making directories, making files, editing those files, removing them. We're going to talk, Anthony, about Vim here in a second, how to get into it, how to get out of it. I encourage you all to try that, even though, again, there are ways to do all of these portions in the GUI. If you go into Python Anywhere and go down to files, you'll see a more familiar looking kind of interface that you can poke around and make directories in. And we'll do some of that too. But this is definitely the way to do it once you get used to it. So the first thing we're going to do is make a directory, right? And the command for that is mkdir, which is short for make directory. And then you need to give it the name of some kind of directory, right? So any name you want. I'm going to do example. And it's not going to give us any kind of confirmation. It's going to say, hey, you sure you're going to do that? It's not going to let us know it did that. It's just going to go down to a new line and give us back our control of our console. So this is kind of what I mean about computers being stupid. Unless we tell it to tell us something, it's not going to tell us anything. So we can verify that it's there by using our ls command. And now we see that example is listed right there. And we can also do ls example. Now that we have that, oh, real quick, I did this without mentioning it. Sorry. Another really good trick in Linux to get used to doing is called tab complete. So once you start typing something, now we have this example directory. I start typing just the letter E, and I hit tab, and it fills in the rest of it for me automatically. That's a great thing to use to make sure that you have things in the path that you think you have, that you're in the directory you're in. Use tab complete, and if it doesn't find it, you may be in the wrong place. To make sure you don't misspell things is really, really helpful. So I use it all the time. I encourage you to do it as well. And we'll use it a couple more times as we go here. But so when I list the contents of a directory, right, not the directory I'm in, because I'm still in the tilde, the my home directory. When I hit enter on this, it's going to say there's nothing in there. So we got nothing. So there's nothing to list. So now let's put something in there. A couple of different ways we can make files. There is one command that's kind of a hack. It's technically for updating the timestamp or the last time that something was changed on a file. But if a file doesn't exist, this will make that file. So it's really often used. It's called touch, lowercase, just the word touch. And then you give it some path file name that you want to create. And so this will just make an empty file. It'll make a blank file for us. So we can do example, and I'm just going to do test.txt as a test text file that we're just going to create to mess around with a little bit. So touch space example / test.txt is the full thing that we're doing. And when I hit enter on this, it will once again give me absolutely no confirmation that it did anything. So we have to do ls, we'll do example, and now we can see that test.txt is listed there. So that's one way of creating things. Now, once we have something and we want to make a change to it, we can use what is called a built-in text editor. So again, Python Anywhere has a way that you could just go and navigate into the file and open it up in their thing and have a text editor there. And we will be doing lots of that when we code with things as we move on. But I want to show you this, which is called Vim. And this is the thing that Anthony was talking about earlier. So I encourage you all to do this, but trust me, 98% of people get stuck in this at some point, and it's incredibly frustrating. So I'm going to show you how to get unstuck and how to get out of it. Don't give up if you get stuck. Trust me, it's not that bad. All right, so the way that we are going to get into here is just the command VI. Lowercase is short for Vim, which I think is short for something else, but VI, and then we're going to give the file that we want to open, and we're going to open and edit this file. So we're going to do that test file that we just made. So I'm using tab complete to get to these things. So V example, and then test.txt. And when I hit enter, it's going to take over my screen again. And it's going to tell me which file I have opened down here in the lower left. It'll say, hey, you've opened this, the full path to it. And if I start typing here, it's going to give me all kinds of errors and tell me all kinds of stuff is wrong. So what we have to do is hit the I key, which stands for insert. And that will, as you see, change at the bottom to insert mode. And then we can start typing like a regular text file. So this is a text file. And then once we're done, done. Then we have to exit insert mode to save this and close it. So we have to hit the button escape, and you'll see that insert disappeared at the bottom, and there's nothing down at the bottom. Right? There's nothing down there at all. So I hit escape and it disappeared. And now I'm going to write colon. You see a little colon popped up. It's the 2 dots. That's telling it that I'm going to give it a command of some kind. And then if I want to save this information that I wrote, I'm going to do W. That's save. Right? That stands for write. So that's writing this file, writing the information into that file. And I can stack that with the command Q to quit. So colon WQ is saving and quitting in this text editor. And this is usually where people get stuck. So if you get stuck here, don't panic. But once you do that, it should take you right back to your console and your command, right? It should close all that stuff up and give you, again, no confirmation that you did anything. So if we want to confirm that we actually did those changes, we can use this other command called cat, which is short for concatenate. And it's going to just take each line out of a file and just print it out here on what's called the standard out. That's the screen we're looking at right here. So we'll give it that same file name that we just adjusted, and we should hopefully see the lines that we added to it. We do concatenate. And there we go. So this prints it out. It says, hey, this is each line that you put in there.
Hey, can I ask you?
Sure.
I lost you after you did this is the test text file, and then done.
Sure.
And I missed where you went after that.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back into that, and to get back into that, as another quick trick, any of these things that we've done, you could press the up arrow and it'll just cycle back to anything you've already written. So if you want to go like reuse or rerun another command, you can. So I'm gonna go back into V, which is where you are, Greg, I think, hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay. And then from here, once you insert, you hit I and you get the insert mode, right?
Yeah.
You wrote some things. To get out of insert mode, you hit escape.
Oh, okay. So that's what I missed.
Yep. And then colon. And if you want to save, W. And then Q. So colon WQ is saving and quitting. If you didn't make any changes, like I didn't make changes this time, I can just quit. I can just quit. If you don't want to keep your changes, I think you add an exclamation point just for reference if you want to like force quit without saving. But I want to say that if you get stuck in V, like again, most people do, don't hesitate to go back to this consoles and just completely throw out this console. Just hit this little X right here and just scrap it and just start a new one and start over. It's not gonna hurt anything. That's exactly what the training environment is for. You're limited to 2 consoles in the free version of Python Anywhere, which is it's enough for us to do what we need to do. But don't be afraid to throw them out and start new ones as you're doing this, especially if you get stuck someplace and you can't figure out how to get out of V or out of Vim. Go ahead and close your console and start another one. Any questions so far? Anybody else stuck in there? Right.
It's just probably a pretty far ahead question, but I'm assuming that with the directories, if you make a bunch of text files, you have those run commands in order if you're trying to make something.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to start running commands out of text files using Python. But I showed it on that chart of languages. There's a thing called shell scripting, and that's exactly what you said here, where you write what's called a shell script, and it's basically just bash commands that you save in a file. and then you can run those from here and like use this to program things and do all kinds of cool automated stuff. Like, so I have a bunch of bash scripts in here that app that I showed you, it'll build it to each checkpoint along the way. So I can automatically like build it and trash it really fast as I'm doing instruction stuff and practice. And so I'm not like rebuilding the app every time on my own from scratch. But yeah, you could absolutely do that. And you can do, I mean, just about anything that you can do on your computer, you can program your computer to do automatically for you using this kind of stuff. So yeah, absolutely. And I like that you're thinking ahead because that is really the concept. That the whole concept is that it doesn't matter how complex a technology we're talking about, how sexy the thing is, it's never going to be anything more than files and directories. And we're going to hit that point so many times. That is this. I'm glad you're seeing that you're putting that together now. That's exactly what this is going to be the whole time. All right. Any other questions? I'm going to go through, I think the last, oh yeah, so a couple of things I want to show you about V, and then how to remove files are the last things I wanted to end with. So Vim, if there are no other questions, any other questions? All right. So Vim can also be used to create files if you don't have one, right? So we did V, and then we did example, and then we used the test that was already there, right? So the test.txt. But if I did say test-2.txt, so this file doesn't exist yet. But when I hit V, it's going to take me to the same interface, just like it did before. And if I want to insert, I don't know, some information in here, do escape :WQ. And now if I list the contents of my example directory, I have both those files. If I concatenate the example, well, here, let me show you what happens with tab complete. Try this out. If you typed up to here, you have both of these files, and you hit tab at this point, it should go with whatever it has. And then as you see, those are common between the two files. And then it becomes different for this one. So it just gave me this auditory, it binged at me and said, no, that doesn't work. I hit tab twice and it'll show me everything that's available without actually completing. And that'll work with commands as well. So if you forget like mkdir, if you forget exactly how to write that, you could type in mk and then here, I'll show you. Type in mk and it'll show you all the commands that start with mk. And then you can find your, oh, it's like, oh yeah, mkdir, that's the one I was looking for, right? So tab complete is really, really helpful. But let's concatenate it and show that we have what we expected. So it was test-2, and there's the text that was in there. So Vim can be used to make a file directly and edit it all at the same time. So it's really, really handy when we just got to make a file real quick, just drop some stuff into it. Definitely recommend it. Don't be put off by it. All right. So the other quick things that I wanted to show are how to remove directories, how to remove files, how to throw them out, and how to scrap them. The first command is good to know. It's rmdir, so short for remove directory. And this is intended for just that. This is for removing directories. But it only removes empty directories. So if we try to run our example directory, it's going to say, nope, can't do that, failed. It's not empty, right? So that's kind of a stop. That's kind of a fail safe. It's useful because there are not a lot of those fail safes in a command line interface. Usually when you throw something out, that's it. You don't get a confirmation button that says, hey, you sure you want to do that? There's no trash bin you could pull it out of once it's actually been removed. It's gone. Unless you're, I don't know, forensics beyond the level that I can, you're not going to easily recover something. So this is the only one that's got something like that. If you do want to get rid of a directory that has things, you're going to use the rm command without the dir part stuck to it, and you'll give it the directory that you want to use after you pass it this flag, this -r. So you do rm space -r. That R stands for recursive. If anybody's familiar with recursion, it's one of my favorite things. We'll talk about it next week. If you don't know what that is, it's awesome. But basically what this is going to do is going to go through a directory all the way to the bottom and just delete everything that's in it, right? So this is what we use for directories that are full of things. So if I do this now with example, it should just completely get rid of my entire example directory. There's nothing left of it. When I do ls, I'm back to just my readme.txt. If I wanted to get rid of, let's make another just example.txt. And I'll show you that it's there. RM by itself without that recursive flag is what we use to get rid of an individual file as well. So if I do just RM and then the name of a file, it will get rid of that file. All right, so rmdir can get rid of empty directories. RM-R with the R flag, the recursive flag, is how you get rid of directories that have things in them. And RM is also how you get rid of files individually. Any questions about that? We are right at time, and those are the things that I wanted to cover. So any questions about any of those?
I had a question earlier, but I was apparently muted.
Sorry about that.
What other files are there other than text? Like,
Oh, other like extensions?
is there other file types? Is it all text?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just using text. It's kind of arbitrary, actually. And computers, it's funny you ask, because computers really don't care. That's more actually for people. It kind of flags for operating systems which file to use. But it really doesn't matter. We're going to be doing a lot of .py files in Python. So like next time when we write our first little things, we're going to do a main.py file, and I'll call this main.py all the time. So that's the extension we're going to use a lot. But there's all kinds of extensions. I was just using text because it's simple. Does that answer your question though?
Kind of. I guess
Okay.
part of the question is, what other kinds of files are there?
Well, so when we talk about files, like they're all really stored as binary in some place, right? So when we talk about that file extension, that's really, again, just telling some program in your computer how to treat that thing. So there are tons of different file extensions. There's all kinds of different files. Like there's CSV files, there's, movie files, WMA files, like audio files, all those different things have different extensions. And really all that's doing is telling the computer what sort of encoding to expect. But ultimately it's all boiled down to binary.
Okay.
So again, I'm not sure I'm answering your question well enough, but does that kind of get at your question?
No, I think that helped.
Okay. Cool. Help confuse you? Any other questions? All right, cool. So I'll leave you with that. I'm gonna, when this recording is done processing, takes a little while, I'll email it out and I'll also post it in the Discord server. I'll have a link to that Discord server again if you haven't, joined already. I encourage you to do so. And well, I don't know. I guess I'll ask the class. How do you feel about this? Do you feel like you would? I have a list, I guess, before I ask this question, in the free coding resources with a whole bunch of different bash commands, more than we covered now, a whole bunch of other ones. Do you want me to send just this that we covered in this class tonight with you, or is this good enough to use as your own notes? Do we have any strong feelings about that?
I think that like the knowing how to find the history is good for the class on like an incremental base, but having the list of commands would be helpful in the long run.
All right. Yeah, I can send that. Cool. And then I'll also, just in case anybody wants them, I'll pin the slides and send those as well. I hate slides, but y'all might want to look at them again. I don't know. Some people like slides and they like collecting them, but cool. If nothing else, then that is the class for tonight. Thank you again for coming, for your time and attention, and we will see you Thursday.
So you said that you're gonna email us how we can download this video as well as the slides.
Yep. I'm going to send the slides, the video, and a list of the commands that we went through. Or
okay,
I'll just list it in the email maybe. But
great, thanks.
Yep, for sure. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jeff. See you Thursday.
Yep, see you Thursday.
Thanks, Spy Man.
Yep, thanks. Talk to you soon. Have a good night.
That went well. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Nice. I'm glad you did.
Oh, there's a leave button. I was going to ask, how do I leave this thing?
Yeah.
All right. You have a good night, guys.
Yeah, you too.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.